The Sterling Industries corporate headquarters executive conference room buzzed with anticipation as 120 employees, business partners, and family members gathered for Dad's retirement celebration. After 38 years of building Sterling Industries from a small manufacturing shop into a regional powerhouse employing over 800 people, Thomas Sterling was finally stepping down as CEO and president, a transition that had been planned for over 2 years and represented the end of an era for the company he'd poured his life into creating. The conference room had been transformed for the occasion with elegant decorations, a catered dinner from the city's finest restaurant, and a professional photographer capturing moments that would become part of the company's historical record. This wasn't just a retirement party. It was a celebration of Dad's legacy and the successful business empire he'd built through decades of determination, strategic thinking, and relentless work ethic. I stood near the back of the room, wearing a simple navy blazer and slacks that had cost less than what some attendees probably spent on their shoes. Around me swirled a crowd of executives in expensive suits, long-term employees celebrating their boss's achievements, and business partners who'd worked with Sterling Industries for decades. To everyone present, I was the family outsider, the daughter who'd somehow failed to inherit the entrepreneurial gene that had made the Sterling name synonymous with business success. What none of them knew was that 8 months ago, I'd quietly purchased Sterling Industries through a complex web of holding companies and private equity transactions. While Dad had been planning his retirement and grooming my brother Michael to take over the family business, I'd been systematically acquiring the company through my investment firm, Phoenix Capital Group, an enterprise that now managed $6.2 billion in assets and owned controlling interests in 43 companies across 12 industries. "Natalie, sweetheart," my Aunt Patricia approached with that familiar mixture of sympathy and curiosity. "How are you doing these days? Still working on those investment projects?" Before I could respond, my Uncle Richard appeared beside her, his confidence bolstered by his position as Sterling Industries Vice President of Operations and his certainty about family dynamics. "She's probably still convinced she's going to make it as a financial advisor. I keep telling people that my niece is exploring the investment world, because honestly, I can't explain what she thinks she's accomplished in 4 years." Polite laughter rippled through the nearby group. My brother Michael, who'd been groomed since college to eventually take over Sterling Industries, raised his wine glass with the satisfied expression of someone whose future had been carefully planned and secured. "Natalie's always been the dreamer in the family. While some of us focused on building real careers in real businesses, she's been chasing fantasies about managing other people's money." More laughter echoed through the conference room. My sister-in-law Jennifer, who'd married into the Sterling success story and now enjoyed the social status that came with being part of a prominent business family, examined her diamond bracelet with practiced disinterest. I've tried to encourage her to consider more traditional career paths. Maybe something in human resources or customer service. Something stable that matches her skill level. I smiled politely and continued sipping my champagne, finding their conversation particularly ironic since Phoenix Capital Group had generated over $1.8 billion in returns for our investors over the past 4 years. While they'd been discussing my limitations, I'd been building an investment empire that employed over 300 financial professionals and had earned recognition from the Wall Street Journal as one of the fastest-growing private equity firms in the country. The room's energy shifted as Dad approached the podium, commanding attention with the natural authority that had served him well in boardrooms and factory floors for nearly 4 decades. At 63, Thomas Sterling remained an imposing figure, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, and carrying himself with the confidence of a man who'd built something meaningful from nothing. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that had made him a respected leader in the regional business community. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate this transition in Sterling Industries history." He looked around the room with obvious satisfaction, his gaze lingering on employees who'd been with the company for decades and business partners who'd contributed to the company's growth and success. 38 years ago, I started Sterling Industries with a $50,000 loan, a rented warehouse, and the belief that American manufacturing could compete with anyone in the world if we focused on quality, innovation, and treating our employees like family. Enthusiastic applause filled the room as employees and partners acknowledged the vision that had created their livelihoods and built a company culture known throughout the region for its integrity and success. Today, Sterling Industries employs over 800 people, generates $340 million in annual revenue, and holds contracts with some of the largest corporations in North America. We've built something that will last for generations. More applause, accompanied by the kind of pride that comes from being part of something bigger than yourself. But tonight isn't just about business achievements, Dad continued, his tone becoming more personal. It's about family, about legacy, and about passing on the values that built this company to the next generation. His eyes found Michael near the front of the room, where he stood with his wife and children, representing everything Dad considered the continuation of the Sterling success story. Michael has proven himself worthy of the Sterling name and the responsibility of leading this company forward. He's shown the leadership skills, business acumen, and dedication that will ensure Sterling Industries continues to thrive long after I'm gone. Thunderous applause as Michael raised his glass modestly, accepting the crowd's recognition with the grace of someone who'd always known this moment would come. The Sterling family has always believed that success comes from hard work, sound business principles, and the wisdom to build something lasting rather than chasing get-rich-quick schemes or untested ventures. The room nodded approvingly, appreciating this philosophy that had guided the company's steady growth and financial stability for decades. Which brings me to a more difficult topic, Dad said, his tone shifting to something that sounded both disappointed and resolved. Not every family member chooses to embrace these proven approaches to building wealth and career success. The room went quiet, sensing that this retirement celebration was about to include some family drama that extended beyond business succession planning. My daughter Natalie decided 4 years ago to leave her promising position in our accounting department to pursue what she calls investment management. Despite our attempts to guide her toward more practical career choices, she's insisted on this path that has produced no measurable results. Uncomfortable silence filled the conference room as 120 people focused on me with varying degrees of sympathy, embarrassment, and judgment. For 4 years, I've watched her struggle with unrealistic expectations about the financial world, refusing stable employment opportunities and chasing fantasies about managing investment portfolios. The tension in the room was palpable now. Everyone understood that this was more than a retirement speech. It was a public family intervention disguised as business commentary. "You've wasted your life," Dad said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room as he looked directly at me. "Look at your successful brother." He gestured toward Michael, who stood uncomfortably in the spotlight, clearly not expecting to be used as a weapon in his father's public criticism of his sister. Michael built his career through proven methods: education, apprenticeship, gradual advancement, and respect for established business practices. He's earned his position through demonstrable achievements and measurable contributions to our company's success. The silence that followed was heavy with judgment and second-hand embarrassment. I could see people exchanging glances, some looking uncomfortable with the public nature of this family confrontation, others nodding in agreement with Dad's assessment. I stayed silent, maintaining my composure while 120 people witnessed my father using his retirement party to publicly declare my life a waste. "Natalie represents what happens when someone rejects practical guidance and pursues unrealistic dreams," he continued, clearly feeling empowered by the audience's attention and Michael's visible success. 4 years of chasing fantasies, 4 years of rejecting real opportunities, 4 years of embarrassing the Sterling family name with her refusal to accept reality. More uncomfortable silence. I noticed several employees shifting nervously, probably wondering if they should be witnessing this family drama at what was supposed to be a celebration of business achievement. "This is why succession planning is so important," Dad said, returning to his business theme. "You need to pass leadership to people who've proven themselves capable of building on what you've created, not people who chase get-rich-quick schemes and reject the wisdom of experience." He was building towards some kind of climactic announcement when the conference room doors opened. Then the nuncio walked in. Marcus Rodriguez entered the room with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding respect in corporate environments. At 45, Marcus had built his reputation as a turnaround specialist who'd successfully managed transitions for dozens of companies, and his presence immediately shifted the room's energy from family drama to business anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the conference room, "I apologize for interrupting Mr. Sterling's speech, but I have an important announcement that affects everyone present." Dad looked confused by this unexpected interruption. Marcus, we discussed your introduction for later in the evening. Actually, Mr. Sterling, there's been a change in the transition timeline that requires immediate disclosure to all employees and stakeholders. Marcus walked to the front of the room, carrying a leather portfolio that contained what appeared to be official documents. As of this morning, Sterling Industries has completed its acquisition by Phoenix Capital Group, effective immediately. The room erupted in confused murmurs and shocked exclamations as people tried to process what they were hearing. The acquisition includes all assets, operations, employee contracts, and management structures. The transition has been planned over the past 8 months to ensure minimal disruption to daily operations. Dad's face had gone completely white. That's impossible. The company isn't for sale. I own controlling interest. Actually, Mr. Sterling, the financial difficulties Sterling Industries has experienced over the past 18 months created several forced sale situations. Phoenix Capital Group purchased the outstanding debt obligations and exercised their acquisition rights under the restructuring agreements. Marcus opened his portfolio and pulled out legal documents. The new ownership structure is effective immediately, and I'll be serving as interim CEO during the transition period. This is ridiculous, Dad said, his voice cracking with panic. Who the hell is Phoenix Capital Group? Marcus turned to scan the room, his eyes finding me near the back of the crowd. Everyone meet our company owner, Marcus said clearly, extending his hand in my direction. The silence that followed was profound. He pointed at me. 120 faces turned to stare at me in complete shock, their expressions ranging from disbelief to confusion to something that looked like fear. Natalie Sterling is the founder and managing partner of Phoenix Capital Group, Marcus continued professionally. She's been overseeing the Sterling Industries acquisition as part of her firm's portfolio expansion in the manufacturing sector. Dad's retirement speech died in his throat. The man who'd just spent 10 minutes publicly declaring my life a waste was now staring at me with the realization that I owned the company he'd spent 38 years building. Phoenix Capital Group manages approximately $6.2 billion in assets, Marcus continued, consulting his documents. Ms. Sterling has built one of the most successful private equity firms in the region, with controlling interests in 43 companies across 12 industries. The room erupted in chaos. Voices rose in confusion, disbelief, and desperate attempts to understand how everything they thought they knew had just been turned upside down. But Natalie, Michael said, his voice barely audible above the crowd noise, you don't have that kind of money. You've been struggling for 4 years. I finally stepped forward, accepting the microphone that Marcus offered me. Actually, Michael, I've been building Phoenix Capital Group for 4 years while you've all been assuming I was failing. We generated $1.8 billion in returns for our investors last year alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad, you were right about one thing. Success comes from hard work and sound business principles. While you were planning your retirement, I was working 18-hour days building a company that now employs over 300 people and has earned recognition from the Wall Street Journal as one of the fastest-growing private equity firms in the country. I looked around at the 120 people who'd just witnessed my public humiliation, then back at Dad, whose retirement celebration had just become the announcement of his company's acquisition by the daughter he'd declared a failure. Michael, you'll continue as operations manager under the new ownership structure. Your salary and benefits package will actually improve under Phoenix Capital Group's employee compensation policies. And Dad, I continued, your retirement package will be honored exactly as originally planned. Consider it a thank you for building something worth acquiring. I handed the microphone back to Marcus and headed toward the exit. Oh, and Dad, next time you want to publicly declare someone's life a waste, you might want to make sure you're not standing in a building they own. As I walked out of the conference room, my conference room in my company, I left behind 120 shocked people and one very surprised former CEO who'd just discovered that his failed daughter owned everything he'd spent his life building. Sometimes the best response to being told you've wasted your life isn't defending your choices. It's owning the company where they're saying it.